Hi, Jim. Nice to see you.
Oh, nice to see you as well, Michelle.
I'm looking forward to our discussion today, and I thought you'd start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and experience and what your role is here at RapidCanvas.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is primarily in technical sales. I actually have an electrical engineering degree, but I've done technical sales roles my entire career. I started out primarily in the kind of telecom and sort of IoT space, and the last few years I've sort of moved more in the direction of software. My role here at RapidCanvas is Vice President and General Manager of Enterprise AI Solutions. And what I'm here to do is to help connect the dots, right? To help companies understand how to leverage AI in a very practical way to solve very boring traditional business problems using very cutting edge technology.
Excellent. That's something that's near and dear to my heart too, because dirty industries, old industries would have very ingrained problems in their organization, and usually it's hard to get practical solutions that deliver impact right away. So I'm
That's
looking forward to our discussion on how they can accomplish that. So you've talked about the real barrier to AI success isn't really about technology or budget, that it's culture.
yes.
What made you realize that culture was the missing piece that so many organizations overlook?
Yeah, I think that the AI is moving so fast. It's having such a tremendous impact on the way all businesses do things that there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. And I think that what's really important for any company is to think about how they're going to apply AI from a cultural standpoint. So first of all, trying to help people understand that it's not about replacing people. It's not about necessarily always about cutting costs, but it's also about enabling new directions, new ways of doing things. And so I think that approaching it from a cultural standpoint can create a foundation, and from there, leaders can create champions within the organization, different people who can come up with different use cases, and then sort of start by hitting the ones that are the lowest hanging fruit, right? And that's typically what we tell our clients is, let's start with something that's relatively low complexity, but still has a pretty good ROI, because that's a good way to kind of get your feet wet to really get started with AI. And that those are some of the things I think we're talking about when we talk about establishing a culture for AI.
Excellent. And when you talk with the employees themselves about AI, what are their most common fears and concerns that you hear from them? And how do you help people see that AI is something to be excited about and embrace and welcome rather than fear?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we typically do is we talk about it in terms of let's solve specific problems, right? Let's not boil the ocean. Let's not focus on pie in the sky. Let's talk about what's the biggest challenge in your business or in your part of the business, and let's really look at it in that context, right? And that helps people to sort of bring it down to earth. And then they're less focused on, oh gosh, what is this crazy AI stuff? And they're more focused on, oh, okay, well, you're telling me that you can use AI, machine learning, and data science to develop a solution that will solve this specific problem that I have. And when you put it in those terms, and then you show them something that actually works, that I think takes away some of that fear and uncertainty and allows people to embrace it a little more easily.
So, Jim, often there's a huge gap between leadership's excitement about AI and then the employees' readiness to embrace AI. So how do you approach bridging that divide between the leadership and the frontline teams?
Yeah, so I think one method that works really well is establishing champions within the organization, right? Maybe one for each functional area. You might have one champion focused on sales, somebody else for finance, somebody else for product. And in each of their functional areas, they're tasked with working with the folks in those organizations to identify use cases, things that we can potentially approach using an AI or a machine learning type solution. Typically, those business problems that are best suited, they kind of meet the following, one or more of the following criteria. They're data intensive, they're excessively manual, or they involve disparate systems that don't play well together. So for example, organizations that have, where they've done acquisitions and they have multiple instances of Salesforce, or they have multiple instances of ERP, wherever those different systems intersect, there's manual process, there's data intensive process that's right for AI solutions. So when people start to own those use cases, that sort of reduces the fear. It's not a big boulder coming down from above, but it's sort of a grassroots effort of identifying areas of efficiency or areas where we can do things that we haven't been able to do in the past.
Excellent. You emphasize that organizations need to build psychological safety around experimentation. What does that actually look like in practice, and how do the leaders create an environment where people feel free and safe to test and even fail with AI?
Yeah, I think it's about being liberal and allowing employees to experiment with the different tools. Give them access to things like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever the flavor is for a particular organization. There obviously have to be safety nets, right? We need to make sure that data is protected, and there's a baseline for that. But giving people that sort of latitude to try different things, to use AI in their everyday work, I think that's critically important. And I think that goes back to that identification of those potential use cases, right? Sometimes it's someone identifies a use case because they've been sort of experimenting on their own, and it's you're much more likely to get to something practical and useful that way than trying to stick purely to the theoretical.
Okay. And for leaders who recognize the cultural change, but feel overwhelmed about where to begin, what's the first tangible step that you advise them to start with when they're trying to shift their organization into an AI culture and in that future vision that they have for their organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about really trying to identify use cases, and that is often about not so much trying to think of, oh, hey, well, where can I use AI? It's more like, what are things that don't work? What are things that are clearly broken that kind of meet those three criteria: data intensive, excessively manual, disparate systems. But traditionally, the only way to solve that problem might have been doing a massive software upgrade on a piece of big box software, or implementing a new SaaS product. Very expensive options. What AI does is it gives you the ability to develop bespoke, customized solutions that can be created very quickly at a low cost, that can solve some of these problems that in the past were just nuisance problems, right? There were things that you're just like, oh, we have to live with this. Well, AI is sort of eliminates a lot of that I have to live with this kind of mentality. So finding that low-hanging fruit is the way to start, right? Get some early victories, get some early ROI, build confidence, right? Save the big fish for a little bit down the road when your organization has a bit more maturity. But don't be afraid to start with the smaller projects and get those wins under your belt.
So, with RapidCanvas being a leading agentic AI platform, when they pick those use cases to begin with, how do you implement some of the agentic AI processes in a way that is small enough, that bite-size experimental first project, before they want to go, like, people get excited and they're like, oh, yeah, that sounds really good, that bite size, and then all of a sudden they want the whole buffet. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's always an exciting place to be, right? When people start to realize what's possible, they get excited, and they start to have more of that boil the ocean mentality. So what we do is we take our clients through sort of a workshop process of identifying all the potential use cases, and then we work together to identify what are the 2 or 3 that sort of meet that criteria. They're relatively low in complexity but high in ROI. Start there, create mutual trust, create a tangible ROI, And then we sort of create a roadmap for where we can go from there from an AI perspective. And our clients usually are very receptive to that, right? They understand that, Rome wasn't built in a day. We have to start somewhere practical, but there's no reason why we can't document and create a plan for the more complex use cases down the road.